let's light the chalice with one of our Unitarian Universalist principles. Today, the fourth principle. We light this to covenant to affirm and promote a free and responsible search for truth and meaning.
And now we will be singing our first congregational song, My Life Flows On, in Endless Song, and the words will be up on the screen. Please stand as you wish.
Congregational covenant. Love is the spirit of this place, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Thank you. Scott?
Good morning. I'm Scott Eller, and I'm here to describe and solicit volunteers for a new reading collaboration between the Society and the LoveWorks Academy. I think you all know that the LoveWorks Academy is a charter school, a Minneapolis charter school with a performing arts emphasis that has 120 kids here every day during the week. Most of us don't see them. But it's a very good relationship, a very good mutual relationship that we have with the Academy. Sometime before the end of the year, we approach them to ask if they would like some volunteers to assist in their reading program. Generally speaking, all schools like volunteers to come in and help, and there is always a need. But we certainly did not approach them with any, if they had said no, we weren't going to do it, and then when they were very enthusiastic about us coming in, of course, they designed the program. They told us exactly what they need, not us telling them what we wanted to do. So what has emerged, and the details aren't completely done yet, is a volunteer program, an extensive volunteer program that's going to start in mid-January. Their need was for all of their K-1 students, and there are 25 of them, to get some reading help. And they're going to divide them into groups of 5. So 5 groups of 5, each of Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday from 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock. That fit their schedule. And we're going to produce volunteers in each of those rooms, each of those days for the school year. So this is a big ask. It's going to be, I don't know how many weeks that is. I don't know when they end, but it's probably 14, 15 weeks. And our volunteers will read to or with, not even sure about that, that group of students. This is very exciting. I mean, there are many people in this congregation who are good at hands-on humanism. Some of us, like me, need it to kind of be packaged for me a little bit, as opposed to just go out in the world and do stuff. And I think this is a great opportunity for people who would like to do this and who would have the schedule to do this, and I know that's not everybody. The ask is once a week, a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Wednesday. Some people are taking more than 1 day, but that's not really the ask. 1 day a week for the length of this program is still a very significant commitment. 1 o'clock to 2 o'clock, that part's fixed. To have a group of students. I would love to be able to put more than one of our volunteers in each room. I think, to me, an hour with a kindergarten to first grade group is a long time, and having another volunteer in there would be great. But that means we need at least 15 volunteers to do this. I'd like to have as many as 30. We have 19 already. So thank you to all of those who are doing that, and we'll get more. So I'm going to have a table downstairs, and I can answer as many questions as I can. It's not all nailed down exactly what is going to happen. I have many questions about curriculum and structure and all that. We will also have an orientation session next Sunday, led by Rev. Kelli, about kind of getting our act together as much as we can. And I think as the time goes on, we will still make changes and we will learn from each other as we're doing this. I'm very excited about this possibility. I think we'll be good at it. I think it will be very enriching to us, and it will help in the re-engagement of this community post-pandemic, if I can say post-pandemic. So I invite you to come down and ask questions and sign up, or even don't ask questions and sign up. And we can go from there, but that's what we are planning. It will start about mid-January. One question I get all the time is somebody ever going to be able to do all 14 weeks? And of course not. So there will be vacations, there will be other reasons why you can't come, and we're going to have an extensive substitute list to fill those in. But thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you so much, Scott, Christy Eller, Alan Callender, all who are working to help organize this. Could we just see who has already signed up to be volunteers for this? Put them up, put them up. Excellent. These are the cool folks you'll be working with. Thank you, thank you. So, when I put the microphone in my hand, that means it's time for all ages. I'd like to come out from behind the big pulpit and just stand here and talk a little bit. I love the name of this program, Love to Read. Who in here loves to read? Oh my goodness, that's just almost everybody. Do you remember the time when you went from learning to read to reading for pleasure? Do you know that there's a time when you're learning to read, you're putting together the sounds and the letters and the words to make a story. For a while, someone reads to you, and stories begin to make sense. And then you're able to sound them out a little bit. And then finally, sometimes, not for everybody, but for most of us, it clicks. And we put the letters and the sounds together, and they make the words, and we go, oh, that's how it works. Sometimes people have something in their brain that keeps that little click from happening, but they can still learn to read if they practice it. And some people don't love it, and that's okay too. There are other ways to experience the world. But for many of us, every story that we hear, every single story that we hear, every word that we read is all made up of the same 26 letters. Isn't that amazing? The greatest writing in the world. I'll just pen Shakespeare over there, because I think that's some of the greatest writing in the world. Down to the silliest, goofiest joke. All of it is made up of the same 26 letters. That was really just a lead-in for me to tell a really silly joke. So what do you get when you cross an angry sheep and an angry cow? Two animals that are in a really bad mood. Y'all, when you laugh at me, it just encourages me. That's not good. I think learning to read and sharing stories with each other, learning to write and share your own story with other people, learning to tell stories even if you don't write it down. When we tell our stories to other people, they hear their stories in it. That also comes through music, right? These songs are stories. Somebody wrote them down, and then these great folks learned to sing them. Some of you wrote them down. Sometimes you write your own songs. And we share our stories that way. And when we learn to tell our story, somebody else can see themselves in it. That's kind of magic, I think, in a very ordinary, everyday way. And when we look at it that way, we lift the very ordinary thing up and go, wow, look, my mom read me a story last night. My adult read me a story last night. She shared that story with me. And now I can share a story with somebody else. And that's how this relationship thing works. That is what I'll end on. And as you go out to your class today, think about how you might share a story with somebody else. And we're going to sing our children out.
Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. Be the change you want to see in the world. And change will come to you. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. Be the light you want to shine in the world. And change will come to you.
First Unitarian Society exists because of its generosity, because of the generosity of its members and friends in time, in talent, and in treasure. This congregation is independently funded and democratically governed. We need your help to keep First Unitarian Society healthy and vibrant. The easiest way to give is to go to our website, firstunitarian.org, and click on the Give link in the upper right corner. You can also give on PayPal, on the Vanco mobile app, or by sending a check or dropping a check off in the office, cash, whatever. For those who are in the building and would like to contribute, you can stop by the office after assembly today, and we thank you, all of you, for making the work of First Unitarian Society possible. We are a congregational humanist community. We're here for each other. On Sundays, we take a few moments to reflect on the joys, the sorrows, and the milestones of the human experience. In doing this, we remind ourselves of the value of a moment of stillness, and we are reminded to stay in touch with our own humanity. As a gathered community, we do this so that no one among us is alone, either in celebrating life's joys or in facing life's tragedies and burdens. We send healing thoughts to Joyce Riedessel today, who had surgery on her right hand. I think she was involved in a knitting accident, a contact moment. And I've heard that she's unable to knit, but I see her right there, still making it happen. Joyce, we hope that you are, all your fingers are working well soon. We hold members Jim Dryden and Wayne Goff in our hearts today. Jim's father, Robert Dryden, passed away in the early hours of January 3rd. Jim writes, I tucked him in that night and we listened to his favorite songs on the iPad. Imagine by John Lennon, Blue Boat Home by Peter Mayer, Give Yourself to Love, Kate Wolf, Hallelujah, Leonard Cohen, Over the Rainbow, Israel, Kamakave'io Ole, and After the Ball is Over by Nat King Cole. Mary and Bob Dryden were longtime members of Summit Unitarian Universalist Fellowship in Santee, California. This relationship greatly enriched many years of their lives. Now we take a few moments to reflect on our world and on those who work to comfort and heal the suffering and those who work for justice.
When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love. When I breathe in, I'll breathe in peace. When I breathe out, I'll breathe out love.
Just cross signals here. A lovely song that a lot of people know that Louis Armstrong sang, so what a wonderful world.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright, blessed day, the dark, sacred night, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I'll ever know. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.
You can just go wherever you want, Bob. Thank you, Eclectics. On my way here this morning, as I was driving through this lovely, beautiful morning, I was working out a little resentment that was going on in my head. You know how you get a little resentment, kind of digs in there, swirls around a little bit. I was working up a pretty good head of steam. Man, I told somebody off. In my car, I was driving, hands on the wheel, but whew, I had it going. Felt really good. Felt good. And then at a stoplight, getting pretty close to the society here, I wondered how I could use the lesson that I'm trying to teach this morning and apply it to myself, using the metaphor of the labyrinth to help me center myself in this situation. So I want to use my story as an example of what I mean. But first, I want to give a little background about the labyrinth, tell you what I'm talking about a little bit. So some of you may be familiar with the labyrinth as a walking path, and some of you may know the labyrinth as the 1986 movie starring David Bowie, right? When I first said I was going to do this, I think they thought I was going to do a little movie review, right? That labyrinth of the movie, a charming movie, a collaboration between George Lucas and Jim Henson with these Muppet-like characters, these goblins, involves a maze. And a maze, the way I'm using it, is a puzzle to be solved, like a corn maze, right? You go in and there are blind alleys and lots of twists and turns, and you have to figure out your way to the center and figure out your way out. For my uses today, that's a maze. I am talking about a labyrinth. A labyrinth in this use came to popularity as a spiritual practice, a mindfulness practice in the 1990s, and it is a unicursal path, one path into the center and the same path out again. That's what I'm talking about a labyrinth. Now, this renewal of this as a mindfulness practice or a spiritual practice was led by the Reverend Dr. Lauren Artress at Grace Episcopal Cathedral in San Francisco in the early to mid-90s. So this is a little bit about where these ancient symbols, I'll show you some images shortly of these ancient symbols that are used as a spiritual practice. There's a story in mythology that I think is useful to tease out maze from labyrinth. And that's the story of Theseus and the Minotaur. Theseus and the Minotaur. There was a great palace in Crete built by King Minos. And he had Daedalus. You may remember Daedalus's name. He created the wings for Icarus. He was an engineer and a creator. Daedalus created the great maze underneath the palace. And in this maze lived the Minotaur, this creature that was half bull and half man. And every few years, the other nations of Greece sent young teenagers as a tribute to be eaten by the Minotaur. Oh, it was smelly and dark. Oh, so smelly down there. Can you imagine? All closed up, dark, and there were bones on the ground, crunchy. Oh, it was a bad place. Well, one year, Theseus was among the youth that were sent to Crete to give their lives to appease this Minotaur. But he thought he had a plan, and he was full of himself and also full of the will to fight. And so, as he was just about to go in to the great gates of the labyrinth were about to open, and he was about to go into this maze, he saw Ariadne. Ariadne was the daughter of the king, and she was standing on a bridge up above, and she had talked to Daedalus because she had had her eye on Theseus, you see. And so Daedalus had given her a golden ball of thread. And the idea was that whoever had that golden ball of thread could drop it and take the thread along, drop the end of it and take the thread along, and then could find their way back out. So Ariadne drops the ball of golden thread off the bridge, and Theseus catches it. A little wink, perhaps. And goes in with the other tributes, goes into the labyrinth, and it's dark, and it's smelly, and it's crunchy. And he drops the end of the ball of thread, and as he goes in, it creates a pathway for him, and he finds his way to the Minotaur. He's able to slay the Minotaur. That's a whole other part of the story. Won't spend a lot of time there. But because he can find his way out again, it makes it from a maze to a unicursal path, a labyrinth. Do you see? Because he's got the key, the clue to come back out again. I love that story. There's a lot in it. And it tells us that we can project onto the labyrinth whatever psycho story is going on with us. Life and death, grief and joy, desire, all of the things are possible around that. So here are some images of the labyrinth. The first one is the Cretan labyrinth. This is a 7-circuit labyrinth. If you count the rings, you'll see 7 circuits. And this dates from about 3,000 years ago. The first place that we find it is inside a tomb. And there's some idea that it is the pathway for the soul to get out of the tomb and go to heaven or to an afterlife. Then it began to spread around as sort of graffiti. And if I teach you how to draw it, you can always draw it. There's this cute little trick to drawing it, and you can always draw it. In medieval times, the next slide, labyrinths began to appear in churches and cathedrals. Here are 3 from Northern Europe. And the idea was that people were called out of their faith to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem, right? You've heard this about needing to make a pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Most people couldn't do that. It was too far, it was too dangerous, it was too expensive, it was fraught with problems. And so this stood in as a metaphor for a pilgrimage. You would take one path, you would walk this path into the center, and the same path all the way out again. This next image is a large turf labyrinth from saffron Walden in Essex in England. It's huge. It's about 130 feet across, and it's been there since the 1800s. And the people of the town, it's near the town green, and they keep it trimmed. I've walked this labyrinth. It's pretty fun to walk that one. And this image is the most classic version of the labyrinth from the stone floor of Chartres Cathedral in France. It was built in the 13th century. It is still used today by pilgrims, mostly now American pilgrims who come to sort of pay homage to this original design. The first time I saw this image was at First Universalist Church. There's a lively labyrinth ministry there. And I'm sure that I had never seen it before. I'm positive that I had never seen it before. And I said, oh, yes, that image. There's something really archetypal about it that landed with me. And for many years, I had a practice of walking the labyrinth pretty regularly. There are many, many labyrinths of different designs, several of the Chartres-style labyrinth that are here in the Twin Cities. And so in fair weather or in foul, you can find places to walk the labyrinth. There's something called the Worldwide Labyrinth Locator. You can put in there and find where there are labyrinths in your area. And we are labyrinth rich in the Twin Cities and in Minnesota. So one way that many people walk the labyrinth is to think of it as a threefold path, a threefold path. You walk in releasing whatever is going on in your head, right? Let's say you have a question. How will I respond to so-and-so about that challenge that I have? How will I navigate this grief? How will I get my mojo back? I don't know, whatever it is, right? And you can walk in releasing that out of your mind, if you like, releasing. You get into the center. Remember, you don't have to, there's no puzzle to it. You're walking one way in. You get to the center and stay as long as you like, and perhaps receive some illumination. Perhaps you get an idea, an answer, some clarity. And then you walk back out, bringing that back out into the world. Now, sometimes it works that way, sometimes it doesn't. There was a woman I heard say, well, it just doesn't do anything for me. I mean, it makes me feel peaceful. That's all. It makes me feel peaceful. And that's kind of the goal of mindfulness practice, right? It makes me feel peaceful. So it's not magic. It's not like reading your fortune, but it is a way to quiet the mind. I personally am not good at seated meditation. I don't do well at seated meditation. But a walking meditation, there's something about the rhythmic back and forth, the turning back and forth that quiets my mind and allows whatever wisdom may be there to get past my own chatter. So now back to my story. I'm working out a problem. I got a little resentment. It's kind of digging in there. I've worked up a good head of steam. I told somebody off in my head. And then at a stoplight, I wondered how I could apply the metaphor of the labyrinth to this situation. I thought, okay, I released whatever was that steam that I had built up. I said out loud what I might not say in person. And I got to the center, and I asked myself, I got to the stoplight. Let's call that my center for the moment. I finished that release. And I got to the center, and I could ask myself, well, kid, do you feel better or worse? and I didn't feel better. I had kind of charged myself up with some negative energy. It wasn't magic. It wasn't some spirit coming in and telling me, don't do that, or that's sinful, or that's wrong, or we don't behave that way. It was actually me working out and then asking a question, how does this serve me? And so now I return to that problem and can think, well, that's not how I want to deal with it. That's not how I want to resolve this little resentment. That's not how I want to be in relationship with a person. It's not an exact parallel, but somehow my experience of the labyrinth helped me use that tool and apply it to how do I want to be centered in my life. And I think that's part of what being in this community does. We say that we encourage each other to spiritual growth, mindfulness growth. How does your story fit into this threefold path? How do we release, find illumination, and integrate it out into the world? How can our mindfulness practices help us be more centered? I'm curious. I don't know. But I think mindfulness is the way that I want to try to do this. I'm thinking of other ways that we can use this metaphor of mindfulness to metaphorically find our center. For example, my yoga teacher says that all of these positions that we do are ways to breathe in odd positions. They're ways to find our breath. Isn't that a metaphor for what we do in difficult times? In grief, to find our breath. In conflict in relationship, to find our breath. We can do that when we practice yoga on the regular or other mindfulness breathing techniques. That's why it helps. If we practice on the regular, then when we need those skills, they're there and available to us. Does that make sense? That's how it feels in my head. I'm wondering how else we might use this metaphor for other applications, how our mindfulness work helps us in grief work, in challenges around our employment, in working out financial issues. How does our mindfulness practice, whether it's the labyrinth or something else, help us engage justice issues, especially climate justice issues? How does it help us navigate inequity? Oftentimes, I think we think of our justice work over here and our mindfulness work over here. But it is the integration of the two, that makes each stronger. How can my justice practice strengthen my mindfulness practice? And how does my mindfulness practice strengthen my desire for justice? That's the question that I think is so interesting as humanists, because we don't think that something is going to come down and solve the problems. We are the ones we've been waiting for, and we'd best be mindful and centered lest we approach these problems with hubris. I invite you in the coming days and weeks to think about what are your mindfulness practices and how can you strengthen them, and how do they support the other areas of your life? See if this metaphor works for you. Find out if there's a way to engage with releasing, with finding illumination, and with integrating that back into the world. And as you think of it, I will invite you at noon today after we get a little bite downstairs to eat, to come back up to this space to experience our FUS Labyrinth. We put it out at the winter solstice, have for many years. But if you're not attending then, or if you've got other things that you're doing at winter solstice and don't have time to walk the labyrinth, it's available to you today. And we'll be here, and you can take as long as you like on it. And there will also be some finger labyrinths available, some paper labyrinths that you can trace this image, that you can trace with your finger if you don't wish to walk. Mindfulness is a place to play. A labyrinth is a place to play. It turns a particular spot on the ground into a special, marked out place on the planet where we can bring our full selves, our full consciousness, and then see what happens. May it be so.
So rise as you wish. Please join in singing This Pretty Planet, one time all together, and then 2 times as a round. So the window side folks can follow me, and for the first time, Heather for the second time with the center, and third with Cindy on the wall side. And then those in the balcony, choose your spots as you wish.
Pretty planet, spinning through space, your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle blue giant, spin us around. Roll through the night, safe till the morning light. This pretty planet, spinning through space. Your garden, your harbor, your holy place. This pretty planet, sun going down, your gentle blue giant, spin us around. This pretty planet, spinning through space. Your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun goes down, your gentle blue giant, your holy place. Golden sun goes down, your gentle till the morning light. This pretty planet, spinning through space. Your garden, your harbor, your holy place. Golden sun going down, gentle blue giant, spin us around. All through the night, safe till the morning light.
We will extinguish this flame, but not the light of truth, the warmth of community, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts and in our minds until we are together again.
This last song by Natalie Merchant. When she was a teenager, she worked at a day camp for children with special needs. And so this song, Wonder, was inspired by that experience.
Doctors have come from distant cities.
what they're seeing. They say I must be one of the wonders of God's own creation. And as far as they see, they can offer no explanation. Newspapers ask intimate questions, want confessions. Reach into my head to steal the glory of my story. They say I must be one of the wonders, God's own creation. And as far as they see, they can offer no explanation.
Fearless, ask questions, hold on to what is good. Strengthen the weak, comfort the fearful, serve the suffering. Do what makes you come alive. Rejoice in the power of the human spirit.